The Wanderings of Oisin by W B Yeats. St. Patrick. You who are bent and bald and blind, with a heavy heart and a wandering mind, have known 3 centuries, poets sing, of dalliance with a demon thing. Oisin. Sad to remember, sick with years, the swift innumerable spears, the horsemen with their floating hair, and bowls of barley, honey, and wine, those merry couples dancing in tune, and the white body that lay by mine. But the tale, though the words be lighter than air, must live to be old like the wandering moon. Caoiltear and Conan and Finn were there, when we followed a deer with our baying hounds, with Brown, Scalaun and Lemaire, and passing the Fabolg's burial mounds, came to the cairn-heaped grassy hill, where passionate Maeve is stony still, and found on the dove-grey edge of the sea a pearl-pale, high-born lady who rode on a horse with a bridle of Findrinny, and like a sunset were her lips, a stormy sunset on doomed ships. A citron colour gloomed in her hair, but down to her feet white vesture flowed, and with the glimmering crimson glowed of many a figured embroidery, and it was bound with a pearl-pale shell that wavered like the summer streams, and her soft bosom rose and fell. St. Patrick. You are still wrecked among heathen dreams. Oisin. Why do you wind no horn, she said, and every hero droop his head? The hornless deer is not more sad, that many a peaceful moment had, more sleek than any granary mouse in his own leafy forest house, and among the waving fields of fern the hunting of heroes should be glad. Oh, pleasant woman, answered Finn, we think of on Oscar's pencilled urn, and on the heroes lying slain on Gavra's raven-coloured plain. But where are your noble kith and kin, and from what country do you ride? My father and my mother are Angus and Adain, my own name Niamh, and my country far beyond the tumbling of this tide. What dream came with you that you came through bitter tides on foam-wet feet? Did your companion wander away from where the birds of Angus wing? Thereon did she look haughty and sweet? I have not yet, war-weary king, been spoken of with any man. Yet now I choose, for these 4 feet ran through the foam and ran to this, that I might have your son to kiss. Were there no better than my son, that you through all that foam should run? I loved no man, though kings besought, until the Danann poets brought rhyme that rhymed with Oisin's name, and now I am dizzy with the thought of all that wisdom and the fame, of battles broken by his hands, of stories builded by his words, that are like coloured Asian birds at evening in their rainless lands. O Patrick, by your brazen bell, There was no limb of mine but fell into a desperate gulf of love. You only will I wed, I cried, and I will make 1,000 songs and set your name all names above, and captives bound with leathern thong shall kneel and praise you one by one at evening in my western dun. Oh, Oisin, mount by me and ride to shores by the wash of the tremulous tide, where men have heaped no burial mounds, and the days pass like a wayward tune, where broken faith has never been known, and the blushes of first love have never flown. And there I will give you 100 hounds, no mightier creatures bay at the moon, and 100 robes of murmuring silk, and 100 calves, and 100 sheep, whose long wool whiter than sea froth flows, and 100 spears, and 100 bows, and oil, and wine, and honey, and milk, and always never anxious sleep. While 100 youths, mighty of limb, but knowing nor tumult, nor hate, nor strife, and 100 ladies merry as birds, who, when they dance to a fitful measure, have a speed like the speed of the salmon herds, shall follow your horn and obey your whim. And you shall know the Danaan leisure, and Niamh be with you for a wife. And then she sighed gently. It grows late. Music and love and sleep await. Where I would be when the white moon climbs, the red sun falls, and the world grows dim. And then I mounted, and she bound me with her triumphing arms around me, and whispering to herself enwound me. He shook himself and neighed 3 times. Quelcher, Conan and Finn came near, and wept and raised their lamented hands, and bid me stay with many a tear. But we rode out from the human lands. In what far kingdoms do you go, are Fenians with the shield and bow? Or are you phantoms, white as snow, whose lips had life's most prosperous glow? O you with whom in sloping valleys, or down the dewy forest alleys, I chased at morn the flying deer, with whom I hurled the hurrying spear, and heard the foeman's bucklers rattle, and broke the heaving ranks of battle, and Bran and Shkelan and Lomer. Where are you, with your long rough hair? You go not where the red deer feeds, nor tear the foemen from their steeds. St. Patrick. Boast not, nor mourn with drooping head, companions long cursed and dead, and hounds for centuries dust and air. Oisin. We galloped over the glossy sea. I know not if days passed or hours, and Niamh sang continuously Danaan songs, and their dewy showers of pensive laughter, unhuman sound, lulled weariness, and softly round my human sorrow her white arms wound. We galloped. Now a hornless deer passed by us, chased by a phantom hound, all pearly white save one red ear. And now a lady rode like the wind, with an apple of gold in her tossing hand. And a beautiful young man followed behind, with quenchless gaze and fluttering hair. Were these two born in the Danaan land, or have they breathed the mortal air? Vex them no longer, Niamh said, and sighing bowed her gentle head, and sighing laid the pearly tip of one long finger on my lip. But now the moon, like a white rose, shone in the pale west, and the sun's rim sank, and clouds attrayed their rank on rank about his fading crimson ball. The floor of Alvan's hosting hall was not more level than the sea, as full of loving fantasy, and with low murmurs we rode on, where many a trumpet twists its shell, that in immortal silence sleeps, dreaming of her own melting hues, her golds, her ambers, and her blues, pierced with soft light the shallowing deeps. But now a wandering land breeze came, and a far sound of feathery choirs. It seemed to blow from the dying flames. They seemed to sing in the mouldering fires. The horse towards the music raced, neighing along the lifeless waste. Like sooty fingers many a tree rose ever out of the warm sea, and they were trembling ceaselessly, as though they were all beating time upon the centre of the sun to that low laughing woodland rhyme. And now our wandering hours were done. We cantered to the shore, and knew the reason of the trembling trees. Round every branch the songbirds flew, or clung thereon like swarming bees, while round the shore a million stood, like drops of frozen rainbow light, and pondered in a soft vain mood upon their shadows in the tide, and told the purple deeps their pride, and murmured snatches of delight. And on the shores were many boats with bending sterns and bending bows, and carven figures on their prows of bitterns and fish-eating stoats, and swans with their exultant throats. And where the wood and waters meet, we tied the horse in a leafy clump, and Niamh blew 3 merry notes out of a little silver trump. And then an answering whisper flew over the bare and woody land, a whisper of impetuous feet, and ever nearer grew, and from the woods rushed out a band of men and ladies, hand in hand, and singing all together. Their brows were white as fragrant milk, their cloaks made out of yellow silk, and trimmed with many a crimson feather. And when they saw the cloak I wore was dim with mire of a mortal shore, they fingered it and gazed on me, and laughed like murmurs of the sea. But Niamh with a swift distress bid them away and hold their peace. And when they heard her voice they ran and knelt there, every girl and man, and kissed as they would never cease her pale pearl hand and the hem of her dress. She bade them bring us to the hall, where Angus dreams from sun to sun, a druid dream of the end of days, when the stars are to wane and the world be done. They led us by long and shadowy ways, where drops of dew in myriads fall, and tangled creepers every hour blossom in some new crimson flower. And once a sudden laughter sprang from all their lips, and once they sang together, while the dark woods rang and made in all their distant parts with boom of bees in honey marts, a rumour of delighted hearts. And once a lady by my side gave me a harp and bid me sing and touch the laughing silver string. But when I sang of human joy, the sorrow wrapped each merry face, and Patrick, by your beard they wept, until one came, a tearful boy. A sadder creature never slept than this strange human bard, he cried, and caught the silver harp away, and weeping over the white strings hurled it down in a leaf-hid hollow place that kept dim waters from the sky, and each one said with a long, long sigh, "Oh, saddest harp in all the world, sleep there till the moon and the stars die." And now, still sad, we came to where a beautiful young man dreamed within a house of wattles, clay and skin. One hand upheld his beardless chin, and one a sceptre flashing out. Wild flames of red and gold and blue, like to a merry wandering rout of dancers leaping in the air. And men and ladies knelt them there, and showed their eyes with teardrops dim, and with low murmurs prayed to him, and kissed the sceptre with red lips, and touched it with their fingertips. He held the flashing sceptre up. Joy drowns the twilight in the dew, and fills with stars night's purple cup, and wakes the sluggard seeds of corn, and stirs the young kid's budding horn, makes the infant fern unwrap, and for the peewit paints his cap, and rolls the unwieldy sun, makes the little planets run. And if joy were not on the earth, there were an end of change and birth. And earth and heaven and hell would die, and in some gloomy barrow lie, folded like a frozen fly. Then mock at death and time with glances, and wavering arms and wandering dances. Men's hearts of old were drops of flame that from the saffron morning came, or drops of silver joy that fell out of the moon's pale twisted shell. But now hearts cry that hearts are slaves, and toss and turn in narrow caves. But here there is nor law nor rule, nor have hands held a weary tool. And here there is nor change nor death, but only kind and merry breath. For joy is God, and God is joy. With one long glance for girl and boy, and the pale blossom of the moon, he fell into a druid swoon. And in a wild and sudden dance, we mocked at time and fate and chance, and swept out of the wattle hall, and came to where the dew drops fall among the foam drops of the sea. And there we hushed the revelry, and gathering on our brows a frown, bent all our swaying bodies down unto the waves that glimmer by that sloping green Daidanon sod, sang, God is joy, and joy is God, and things that are grown sad are wicked, and things that fear the dawn of the morrow, or the grey wandering osprey's sorrow. We danced to where in the winding thicket the damask roses bloom on bloom, like crimson meteors hang in the gloom, and bending over them softly said, bending over them in the dance with a swift and friendly glance from dewy eyes. Upon the dead fall the leaves of other roses, on the dead dim earth encloses, but never, never on our graves, heaped besides the glimmering waves, shall fall the leaves of damask roses. For neither death nor change comes near us, and all listless hours fear us, and we fear no dawning morrow, nor the grey wandering osprey sorrow. The dance wound through the windless woods, the ever-summered solitudes, until the tossing arms grew grey upon the woody central hill, and gathering in a panting band, we flung on each high waving hand, and sang into the starry broods. In our raised eyes there flashed a glow of milky brightness to and fro, as thus our song arose. You stars across your wandering ruby cars shake the loose reins. You slaves of God, he rules you with an iron rod. He holds you with an iron bond. Each one woven to the other, each one woven to his brother, like bubbles in a frozen pond. But we in a lonely land abide, unchainable as the dim tide, with hearts that know nor law nor rule, and hands that hold no wearisome tool, folded in love that fears no morrow, nor the grey wandering osprey sorrow. Oh, Patrick, for 100 years I trace upon that woody shore the deer, the badger and the boar. Oh, Patrick, for 100 years, at evening on the glimmering sands, beside the piled-up hunting spears, these now outworn and withered hands wrestled among the island bands. Oh, Patrick, for 100 years we went a-fishing in long boats, with bending sterns and bending bows, and carven figures on their prows of bitterns and fish-eating stoats. Oh, Patrick, for 100 years the gentle nymph was my wife. But now two things devour my life, the things that most of all I hate: fasting and prayers. Patrick. Tell on. Machine. Yes, yes, for these were ancient Aeaean's fate, loosed long ago from heaven's gate for his last days to lie in wait. When one day by the tide I stood, I found in that forgetfulness of dreamy foam a staff of wood. From some dead warrior's broken lance I turned it in my hands. The stains of war were on it, and I wept, remembering how the Fenians slept along the blood-bedabbled plains, equal to good or grievous chance. Thereon young Neav softly came, and caught my hands, but spake no word, save only many times my name, in murmurs like a frighted bird. We passed by woods and lawns of clover, and found the horse, and bridled him, for we knew well the old was over. I heard one say, his eyes grow dim with all the ancient sorrow of men, and wrapped in dreams rode out again with hooves of the pale Findrini over the glimmering purple sea. Under the golden evening light the immortals moved among the fountains, by rivers and the wood's old night. Some danced like shadows on the mountains, some wandered ever hand in hand, or sat in dreams on the pale strand. Each forehead was like an obscure star bent down above each hooked knee, and sang with a dreamy gaze, watched where the sun in a saffron blaze was slumbering half in the sea ways. And as they sang, the painted birds kept time with their bright wings and feet, like drops of honey came their words, but faster than a young lamb's bleat. An old man stirs the fire to a blaze in the house of a child or a friend or a brother, has overlingered his welcome. The days grown desolate and whisper and sigh to each other. He hears the storm in the chimney above and bends to the fire and shakes with the cold while his heart still dreams of battle and love and the cry of the hounds on the hills of the old. But we are apart in the grassy places, where care cannot trouble the least of our days, or the softness of youth be gone from our faces, or love's first tenderness die in our gaze. The hair grows old as she plays in the sun and gazes around her with the eyes of brightness, before the swift things she dreamed of were done. She limps along in an aged whiteness, a storm of birds in the Asian trees, like tulips in the air a-winging, and the gentle waves of the summer seas that raise their heads and wander singing must murmur at last, unjust, unjust. And my speed is a weariness, falters the mouse, and the kingfisher turns to a ball of dust, and the roof falls in on his tunnelled house. But the love dew dims our eyes till the day when God shall come from the sea with a sigh and bid the stars drop down from the sky, and the moon, like a pale rose, wither away.